Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pickdawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. If you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. I'm running a daily $15 MLB best bet, so check it out at Pickdawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Tuesday, June 7th. First up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Miami Marlins. And we're going to see Evan Lee and Edward Cabrera on the mound for this one, a pair of young starters here. Edward Cabrera, 24 years of age, made his season debut back on the 1st of June against the Colorado Rockies. That was at Coors Field, and he pitched 6 innings of shutout baseball. Only 1 hit allowed. He actually had a no-hitter going for the longest time in that one. 9 strikeouts. He did have 4 walks allowed, which is a little worrisome to see in only 6 innings of work, but still a very, very promising start to start the season. And on the other side, Evan Lee struggled a little bit in his major league debut against the Mets, giving up 2 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings. It wasn't a miserable start. I'd like to see the strikeout numbers rise, only 2 Ks in 3.2 innings. But he is facing a Marlins team here that's ranked dead last in baseball in strikeout percentage. Their 29.2% K rate this season is the highest in the league against lefties, and we also know the Marlins dead last in baseball in team OPS against lefties, so it's really tough for me to get behind this kind of price with Miami. I know Cabrera pitched really well in his first start, but he is a young pitcher still. He's facing a pretty weak Washington lineup, and although Washington had a pretty good series at Great American Ballpark, this Lone Depot Park is nowhere near as hitter-friendly as Great American, so I do think the runs are going to be harder to come by for Washington as well. I'm going to take the under here. I just don't see a ton of value on either side, but I do think runs are going to come at a premium, so give me the under in the Nationals Marlins. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Now, we don't have an official lineup for this game quite yet because the Diamondbacks have not listed a starter here, so this is a game I'm probably going to stay away from altogether, but as far as a lean, I'm going to lean towards the Diamondbacks on the money line. I'd really like to see who they're going to go on the mound with in this game, but I do think they're going to be able to do damage offensively. That's enough for me to take a lean here. Ashcraft, 9 strikeouts in 17 2/3 innings for Cincinnati. That is concerning for me. I know he's got a 2-0 record and a 1.53 ERA, but when you're not missing bats and you're pitching at a hitter-friendly ballpark like Great American, usually bad things happen, and when you're facing a Diamondbacks lineup that's number 3 in baseball in isolated power against righties on the entire season, and a Diamondbacks lineup in the last few weeks is number 1 in baseball in team OPS against righties, I do think that Arizona will have a fine day offensively. Will the pitching staff be able to keep runs off the board? We'll have to see who they decide to go with, but I'm going to lean towards Arizona and the over in this Diamondbacks Reds game. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Keegan Thompson and Kyle Bradish are your starters here. Now, this game does look a little trappy as there is a clear mismatch on the mound in this one with Keegan Thompson going up against Bradish. Thompson a 1.99 ERA, a beautiful 6-0 record this season, striking out 38 batters in 45 innings. They'd like to see that number rise, but keeping runners off the base paths, and he hasn't given up a ton of home runs, only 3 homers in 45 innings this season. So he's pitching really well for Chicago. On the other side, it's been the complete opposite for Kyle Bradish, a 6.82 ERA this season, and he's in the bottom 10th percentile in a lot of important pitching stats this year as well, giving up at least 1 home run in his last 5 starts. It kind of scratched my head of why this line is at minus 110 apiece right now. I know the Orioles have been solid in the underdog role at home, and overall they're hitting righties well this season, but the way Thompson's pitched, I really can't fade him in this spot. So I'm going to take the Cubs here on the money line. A little hesitant with that strange price here, but give me Chicago on the money line until Kyle Bradish and Keegan Thompson show me anything different. In our next game, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to see a pair of lefties going at it in this one, in Jose Quintana and Tarik Skubal. Both pitchers having surprise strong seasons this year. Tarik Skubal coming off a 7-inning shutout performance, a 2.15 ERA now in the season. Jose Quintana, a 2.32 ERA, and in his last 5 outings combined, only giving up 4 earned runs total, and they were not easy outings. You faced the Padres, the Cardinals, who are number 1 in baseball against lefties in team OPS, and the Dodgers twice in that 5-outing stretch, so both pitchers in great form right now. The Pirates lineup is doing a lot better against lefties than the Tigers is this season. Pittsburgh is 13th in the league in isolated power against lefties, while the Tigers all the way down in dead last, 30th in the league in isolated power. The Pirates also top 20 in team OPS against lefties. Tigers all the way down at 28th. So I think the Pirates have the advantage offensively. Bullpen-wise, both teams I don't think are very strong in the pitching staff-wise. The Tigers have had good results ERA-wise in the bullpen, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last. On paper, these bullpens are really similar. Really, the difference maker here is you look at the Tigers' record on the road, 6-18 this season, while the Pirates just 2 games under at home this season. I think both pitchers are really strong, but with the better lineup and the better home record, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Pirates, especially at a really good price here on the money line. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Jeffrey Springs and Dakota Hudson on the mound for this one. Now, I like the Rays to win this game, but I also like the over here. I think this total is set way too low. Dakota Hudson's got a 2.96 ERA, but only 28 strikeouts in 51 2/3 innings and a 1.32 whip, so he's walking a lot of batters, giving up a good amount of base hits, and not striking out batters. Also, usually a recipe for disaster on the mound, and especially against a Rays team that usually does pretty well against these type of nibbler, pitch-to-contact pitchers. I think Hudson is in trouble in this spot. On the other side, Jeffrey Springs, he's given up 4 home runs combined in his last 2 outings. Now, I know he's faced really tough lineups against lefties in the Yankees and the Rangers. Rangers, believe it or not, are top 15 in baseball against lefties in team OPS, but the Cardinals are also solid against lefties. They're number 3 in baseball in team OPS against lefties, so I do think the Cardinals will be able to get to Springs a little bit. I think the Rays get to Hudson more, but this total is just set way too low. I think it's going to go up a little bit, maybe to 8.5 before first pitch. So shop your lines, but give me the over in the Cardinals Rays. In our next game, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Minnesota Twins. Now, we don't have an official lineup for this game as the Twins haven't announced a starter, so I would wait to see who they decide to go with. But right now, I'm leaning towards Minnesota, at least on the run line here, if they do wind up being the underdog, getting the 1.5 runs. Jameson Taillon has pitched really well for the Yankees, 6-1 with a 2.3 ERA, and that's really been the case for all the Yankee starters this season. But Taillon hasn't necessarily been a great run line pitcher this year. In his last 4 outings, the Yankees have failed to cover the run line in 3 of those 4, despite winning 3 of those 4 ball games outright. So he's not really getting the most run support. He's going up against a Minnesota Twins lineup that really had a resurgence in Toronto this weekend. The Twins are in a really bad spot. They were playing poor baseball on the road against the Tigers. They had a few players out due to COVID. I know Carlos Correa missed some time due to COVID. And then going into that Toronto series, they had a few players, mostly in the bullpen, that were not able to make the trip to Toronto due to the vaccination protocols. So it was a really tough series for them, and they were actually able to win that series 2-1 in Toronto against a surging Blue Jays team. So I got to give credit to Minnesota. I like the way the offense has looked lately. The bullpen's also doing a little bit better of a job than since the beginning of the season. Still some holes there that I'd worry about, but getting some players back after the trip from Toronto, I think this is a good spot to take Minnesota on the run line here. Give me the Twins plus the 1.5. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the Cleveland Guardians. 2 lefties going at it here in Taylor Hearn and Connor Pilkington. Now, this is an interesting game as there's kind of a couple things that are contradicting each other. Guardians don't hit lefties very well. They're actually one of the worst teams in team OPS against lefties this season, while the Rangers do hit lefties pretty well, right now ranked in the top 15 at 13 in team OPS against lefties. But I do think Connor Pilkington and the Guardians bullpen is a lot better than what Texas has to offer on the mound in this spot. Taylor Hearn, I've mentioned at the beginning of the season, I wasn't really worried with how he was pitching. His ERA was a little high, but I figured he was going to be able to bounce back as the strikeout numbers were there for him. But as of late, the strikeout numbers have plummeted, the walks are up, and he's still giving up at least 1 home run in 3 of his last 4 starts. So I don't really love his situation right now. Even going up against a weak Guardians lineup against lefties, I still cannot trust him here. And Connor Pilkington has really impressed me in his last few starts. He is a good strikeout guy and misses a good amount of bats. At some points, the walks have become an issue for him, but he hasn't given up a home run all season at 17 innings this year in his first 5 outings, so that is impressive. And like I said, I do trust the Guardians bullpen a lot more right now. And late, if this game is close late, I do trust the Guardians to get the win at home. So I'm going to lean towards Cleveland here. They do have a 3 games above 500 record at home at the time of me recording this. I'm going to take the Guardians on the money line. Next up, we see the Oakland A's taking on the Atlanta Braves. We're going to see Cole Irvin and Kyle Wright on the mound for this one. Now, I think this is going to be a really tough spot and a tough series overall for the Oakland Athletics. I know they've played pretty well on the road this season at 500 or 13-13 record, but Kyle Wright has pitched really well for the Braves this season. The Oakland A's offense hasn't done much at all. They're ranked dead last in baseball in team OPS against righties and 28th in baseball in isolated power against righties. Kyle Wright had a couple of struggling starts at the beginning of May, but recently he's pitched well, and he went up against a pretty tough Diamondbacks lineup, went 6 innings, shutout baseball last time out. The walks have become a little bit of an issue for him lately, but like I said, against a weak Oakland A's lineup, not sure that's going to be an issue for him. And going up against Cole Irvin, Cole Irvin has been a good job of keeping the Oakland A's competitive in his starts, but the Braves are really, really good against left-handed pitching this season. Number 1 in baseball in isolated power against lefties, and number 4 in baseball in team OPS against lefties. Playing at home, I'm going to take the Braves here on the run line. The money line price is a little too steep for me, so let's get a better price by laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Chicago White Sox. Mitch White and Michael Kopech on the mound here. Now, the Dodgers are only small favorites because they are playing a pretty competent White Sox team, and the White Sox do play their best ball at home. But the Dodgers, number 1 in baseball in team OPS against righties, and they're going up against Michael Kopech, who did have his worst start of the season in his last outing against the Blue Jays. He was really barely able to get through 3 innings of work, 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 homers, and 4 walks in a 7-3 Chicago loss. The White Sox have actually lost 3 of Kopech's last 4 starts as well. And I know he's faced some tough lineups in the Blue Jays, the Yankees twice, and the Guardians, but he's not getting any easier against the Dodgers here. I know Mitch White hasn't been the strongest, but the White Sox have also not done much against righties this season, team OPS-wise, isolated power-wise, home and away. It just hasn't been the case for Chicago. So I'm going to take the Dodgers here. We're getting a really good price with a much better team, in my opinion. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Then we're going to see Ranger Suarez and Jason Alexander on the mound for this one. Now, no, this is not the Jason Alexander that co-starred with Vanessa Williams in the Bye Bye Birdie remake. This is the Jason Alexander that gave up 7 base hits and 3 walks in his first 7 innings of the season last time out, giving up only 2 earned runs, but 3 total runs in that one. The 3 strikeouts does concern me from Alexander, and we're obviously going to have to see a little bit more work for him to make the biggest judgment call on his game. But I do think the way the Phillies are looking lately, especially after they decided to fire Joe Girardi, it's tough to fade the Phillies in this spot. Ranger Suarez hasn't been too sharp this season, but the Brewers have struggled against lefties this year overall. We saw the Padres left-handed starters do a pretty good job against Milwaukee in that last series. And on the season, the Brewers are 24th in baseball in team OPS against left-handed pitching. So I'm going to take a shot with the Phillies here on the road as a slight road dog. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Houston Astros. We're going to see the rematch between Chris Flexen and Justin Verlander in this spot. Now, man, let me tell you, that first matchup between these two with these starters on the mound made me rethink my life a little bit. Justin Verlander was not able to get through 6 innings against the Seattle Mariners when he gave up 10 base hits and 6 earned runs, 4 home runs in that game in a 6-1 loss. And all of a sudden, Chris Flexen, who I had mentioned is probably going to regress the rest of the season, he would look like Cy Young out there, going 7 innings, 1 earned run, and 6 strikeouts against the Astros. That was probably the craziest game I'm going to see all season long, but the books aren't really, not really reacting to that one much, as the Astros are big favorites in this spot. Minus 250 right now on the money line. It does look like the line is dropping a little bit, but that could be expected. The public's probably going to see, hey, Flexen dominated the first game. Why doesn't he do it again in this spot? But overall, the Astros have been really good against right-handed pitching. It was kind of, in my opinion, a fluke performance by them to not get on the board. They still had 7 base hits in that game against Flexen. They're 5th in baseball in team OPS against righties. They're 4th in baseball in isolated power against righties. And Justin Verlander, even though he really struggled in his last start against the Mariners, he was able to bounce back in the way that we know Justin Verlander can. He went 7 innings, 3 earned runs in a 5-4 Astros win with 6 strikeouts in that one. Not his sharpest performance, but definitely a lot more promising to see from him. I'm going to take Verlander and the Astros here on the run line. I think they get some revenge on Flexen and win this game comfortably at home. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Kansas City Royals. Now we see Alek Manoah and Brad Keller on the mound here. I think the Blue Jays are going to win this game comfortably. I do lean towards the over as well, but with Brad Keller on the mound, I just cannot back the Royals in this spot. Keller was really pitching well for the Royals at the beginning of the season, but now in his last 5 outings, 4 of those last 5, he's given up at least 4 earned runs. The base hits are piling up. The walks are piling up. The strikeout numbers are going down. The home runs have also been an issue, giving up 5 homers in his last 5 outings. Combined, it's just not going to get it done for me against the Blue Jays offense that has looked a lot better lately than they did at the beginning of the season. I think Toronto wins this game by a few runs. I think the Royals can score a few also. Their offense has been doing a lot better against righties now than it did at the beginning of the season, but I don't think it's going to be enough for them to cover the run line here. Give me the over and the Blue Jays on the run line. In our next game, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Los Angeles Angels. We're going to see Garrett Whitlock and Reed Detmers as the projected starters, but we could see a pitching change as the official line has not been released for this game. But if these are the starters, I'm going to lean towards the over in this one. Garrett Whitlock has pitched well in his last couple starts, 12 innings, 2 earned runs combined in those last 2. But A, they were against pretty weak lineups in the Orioles and Reds. And B, the strikeout numbers are way down. In his last outing against the Reds, didn't give up a single earned run in 6 innings, but didn't have a single strikeout to show for it either. He's more of a strikeout guy, not really a pitch-to-contact pitcher. So not having those strikeouts does concern me. Going up against an Angels lineup that, sure, hasn't been that strong lately, but is still very talented at the top. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, when they get some guys back from injury, they'll be even stronger. But I still think they have enough firepower now to get at Whitlock in this spot. And on the other side, Reed Detmers did throw a no-hitter this season, but even after that no-hitter, we've seen him struggle at times. And the Red Sox are hitting the ball really well against both righties and lefties. Against lefties on the season, they're now number 5 in baseball in team OPS and number 7 in baseball in isolated power. So I know the Angels Stadium is not as hitter-friendly as the Fenway Park is, but I still like the over in this Red Sox-Angels matchup. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the San Diego Padres. Taijuan Walker and Yu Darvish on the mound for this one. Now, this is the type of game that the Mets have been able to win all season long. They are the underdogs in this spot, and I think there is some value on them here. Going up against Yu Darvish, sure, he may be the more public perceived better pitcher, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think he's the better pitcher necessarily in this spot. When last 2 outings he has taken the loss for the Padres. Last outing giving him 5 earned runs, 7 hits, a home run to the St. Louis Cardinals, and now he's facing a much stronger lineup in my opinion. The Mets, number 2 in baseball in team OPS against righties. Guys like Lindor and Alonso are really on fire right now. 2 of the top 10 hitters in terms of RBIs are in this season in the National League. And Taijuan Walker, sure, I've had my worries about his game at times, but he's not giving up a lot of hard contact. Only 2 home runs allowed in 40 2/3 innings, and both of those home runs came in the same start against the Philadelphia Phillies back at the beginning of May. So I'm really not concerned with his game. He's not giving up a lot of hard contact, getting a good amount of ground balls, and I think he pitches well against the Padres lineup that hasn't done a ton against righties this season, especially at the bottom of that lineup. So I'm going to take the Mets here, getting a ton of value on the plus money line. In our final game of the night, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the San Francisco Giants. Antonio Senzatella going up against Carlos Rodon. Now, not only do I think this is a pitching mismatch, but I do think taking the Rockies in the first game of a road trip after being at Coors Field is usually a bad thing to do. And the Rockies 7-15 on the road this season. Giants are above 500 at home. Carlos Rodon, he struggled at times this year. He had an amazing start to the season. Not so strong his last couple starts, but Antonio Senzatella is not backable in my opinion right now, giving up a ton of base hits and a lot of traffic overall. And I think that this is a good spot to take the Giants on the run line here. Not really that big of favorites, which is a little interesting. I'm kind of surprised to see that. I know they are dealing with some injuries both in the lineup and the bullpen, but still, I think they're the far better option right now. Give me the Giants on the run line. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday, June 7th. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.